And one person I talked to even went as far as to say, well, it's just a relationship with God, and it's like, it doesn't matter what your religion is, as long as you have that good relationship. So it's kind of, and look, this is a belief that's common, that it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Hindu or whatever your religion, as long as you have that relationship. Because we all know there's only one God anyway, so if you would tend to worship Him this way and they worship Him that way and no one really knows, and you just, and you're trying your best, God knows your heart, you could see that you're sincere and you're trying to follow Him in whatever way you can, then that's good enough. And this is actually a very Hindu thought. That belief system. I spent some time on an airplane once sitting next to a man as a Hindu, and I tried to give him the gospel, and he spent quite a bit of time trying to say how no one really knows that much about God, so people are kind of doing what they think they can, but we're all still worshiping the same creator and stuff, which is actually a really wicked religion because the religions are so different. Right. At least when you have the truth versus everything else, they're very different. The way that you're saved is very different. It's not based on you. It's not based on how well you could obey and listen and everything else. That's not it at all. So they'll say, this relationship. And a lot of people will use that, well, I have a relationship with God. And that's kind of vague anyways, because it's like, well, what do you mean? I mean, what if you have a bad relationship? What happens if you do this or this? And there's never really a good defining point for a lot of people. And I like to point out to people that there's only one relationship that really matters, and that's the relationship of having a father-son relationship. Because normally when people say, well, it's your relationship, they're talking about how well you get along with somebody, right? So if you have a relationship with Brother Peter and I have a relationship. So like when we're agreeable and can talk to each other and hang out and have fun, then we have a good relationship. But if one of us does something the other one doesn't like and we're fighting, then we have a bad relationship. And people will use that type of thing like, well, if you got a bad relationship with God, then maybe you're in trouble. But if you have a good relationship with Him, then you're doing all right. But that is not the relationship where we need to be worried about when it comes to our salvation. Amen. That's right. Because the relationship that you need to be saved is being born into God's family, being born again. Having that spiritual birth, being a member of God's family by virtue of your second birth, and having that father-son relationship. And that's that's a good tool actually to use with people to help them understand the gospel, is that once you're born into a family, you can never be unborn. So whether or not your father is happy with you or angry with you or any emotion with you, you're still a son. And that's the good news, and that encapsulates really nicely the gospel that, hey, you don't have to do anything. You have to earn your way into the family. You're not like a bondservant that has to buy your freedom because you can't pay enough. Right. But there is someone that came and made the payment in full. Amen. To free you and to grant you access into that family. Of course, Jesus Christ, who paid for all of our sins. That's the relationship. But this isn't a gospel sermon, so I'm going to continue on here because that's people will try to focus on the relationship. And honestly, I don't spend a lot of time with that. Usually I bring up the father-son relationship thing later on in my gospel presentation to drive that home, especially when people bring that up from the beginning. Because when you speak with people, when you talk to people, obviously the goal is to reach them, right? We don't preach at people. We don't talk at people. We don't run down a list of just like a script, right? Like a sales script or something. We're communicating with people. We're trying to help people to, one, understand the gospel, and two, persuade them to believe the gospel. So when you can pick up on areas that their understanding of God, of salvation, in the words that they're using, and you could pick up on areas where they're off, where it's flawed, where they don't have the right understanding, and it's clear through what they're explaining, what they're describing. It's really good to be able to use and correct the terms that they use in their view, because that is something that's going to make more sense to them. right? So if people are coming at you using this concept of having a relationship, and that's the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth as to why they think they're going to heaven. Well, I've got a good relationship with God. They're thinking, I pray every day, I go to church, I try to do good, I'm doing all this stuff. That's my relationship. That's where their mind is at. That's where their trust is at. And then you could come along and explain, no. Relationship's important, but this is the relationship that you need to focus on getting down right now. This is the relationship that matters, because that can click with them maybe even better than some other things, and they need to change their mind on what they're trusting in. So it's good to be able to pick up on the concepts that they use to explain what they're trusting in to be saved and how they feel they could know God. And you're not going to be able to know God without having that father-son relationship.